His mistress sent me their photos. By morning, the company wanted answers. At 11:47 on a Thursday night, my husband's mistress sent me 7 photographs from his company phone. And the first, Grant was kissing her beneath the chandelier of a hotel suite in Chicago. In the second, he was wearing the white bathrobe I had packed for his executive strategy retreat. His wedding ring rested on the nightstand beside a bottle of champagne. The last photograph was the cruelest. Madison Cole sat on Grant's lap with one hand beneath his open collar. She was smiling directly at the camera. Her message appeared beneath the picture, said you stopped being his wife years ago. I thought you deserved to see what happiness looks like. I stared at the screen until the words stopped moving. Then I noticed the blue folder on the hotel desk behind them. Nexera staffing. Final vendor approval had rejected that contract twice. Madison's brother owned Nexera. Grant had told the board the vendor had passed my compliance review. At 11:53, I forwarded the message, photographs, and original metadata to Harborwell Senior Living's leadership channel. 42 executives, board members, human resources officers, and corporate attorneys received the same calm note. These images were sent to me from a company-issued device. They appear to document an undisclosed relationship between a director and a subordinate, possible misuse of company travel funds, and possession of a vendor file currently under compliance review. Please preserve all relevant records. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, Grant and Madison arrived at headquarters together. Their badges no longer opened the doors, and my name is Rebecca Hale, although almost everyone calls me Becca. Was 51 years old when my marriage ended in a Microsoft Teams channel. That was the version Grant later told people. Anyway, he said I had detonated 27 years of marriage in front of the entire company because I was jealous, vindictive, and unable to accept that he had fallen in love with someone younger. The truth was less dramatic and far more damaging, and why marriage had been ending quietly for years. The message merely turned on the lights. Slept for 90 minutes that night. At 2:10 in the morning, I heard Grant's key turn in the front door. He had told me his return flight from Chicago would not land until Friday afternoon. He came home carrying the suit bag I had packed for him. The house was dark except for the light above the stove. I sat at the kitchen island with a mug of untouched tea. Grant stopped when he saw me. He was 53, broad-shouldered, silver beginning to show at his temples. He had spent most of his adult life entering rooms as though he had been expected that night. He looked like a man who had discovered the room belonged to someone else. What did you do? He asked. His phone must have been vibrating continuously. Had turned mine off, but the company's response had already begun. I preserved evidence. You sent private pictures to the board. Madison sent them to me from her company phone. That did not give you the right to distribute them. I sent them to legal, human resources, senior leadership, and the board. I did not send them to employees outside that group. You put them in a company chat. The leadership compliance channel. 40 people saw them. 42. His jaw tightened. I had spent 27 years softening facts when Grant found them inconvenient. That night, Precision felt clean. He set his suit bag on the floor. Madison had been drinking. The message was sent at 11:47. What does that have to do with anything? You were supposed to be at a dinner with the acquisition team. The dinner ended early. Did the company pay for the suite? That is none of your concern. I'm Vice President of Vendor Integrity. Misuse of corporate travel funds is exactly my concern. Grant dragged one hand over his face. You could have called me. I did call you. He looked away. I had called 3 times before Madison sent the photographs. Grant declined the first 2 calls. The third went directly to voicemail. You could have waited until morning. So records could disappear? Do you honestly believe I would destroy evidence? I honestly believed you were at a strategy dinner. He stared at me. In the stillness, the refrigerator motor clicked off. Grant lowered his voice. This is not how adults handle a marital problem. No. Adults generally avoid sleeping with their employees. She does not report directly to me. Madison is partnerships manager for your development division. You approve her budget and performance review. Her immediate supervisor is Kevin. You hired Kevin. That is not the same as a direct reporting relationship. The board can decide. His expression changed when I said the word board. Harborwell Senior Living Group was not a public company, but it was large enough to make scandal expensive. It developed and managed assisted living and memory care communities in 7 Midwestern states. Grant's father, Arthur Hale, had co-founded it 40 years earlier with a former hospital administrator. Arthur died 9 years before the photographs were sent. His widow, Celeste, still owned 18% of the company and occupied a board seat. Grant owned inherited shares and served as director of development, had joined Harborwell after our daughter started kindergarten. At first, I worked 3 days a week reviewing vendor invoices. Over 20 years, I built the company's compliance and vendor integrity program. Grant liked to tell people he brought me into the business. He rarely mentioned that the department I created had saved Harborwell more than $30 million in overbilling, contract disputes, and regulatory penalties. Why was the Nexar file in your hotel room? I asked. Grant's eyes shifted toward the suit bag. What file? The blue folder in the photographs. You enlarged the pictures? I looked at them. That proposal was part of the retreat materials. No. It was removed from the agenda after I refused approval. You did not refuse approval. I sent a written rejection. You raised questions. I wrote, Nexara cannot be approved until ownership conflicts, insurance deficiencies, and pricing anomalies are resolved. Those issues were being resolved. By whom? He picked up his suit bag. I am not conducting a corporate interview in my kitchen. Then we can discuss the affair. He stopped for one moment. I thought he might deny it. Instead, he said, I never wanted you to find out like this. The sentence was almost insulting in its familiarity. People said it when they wanted credit for regretting the method of discovery rather than the conduct itself. How long? I asked. Grant set the bag down again. Becca. How long? He looked toward the hallway. 8 months. I thought of Thanksgiving at Celeste's house. Madison had attended because several employees without nearby family were invited. She helped me carry dishes into the kitchen. She complimented my pecan pie. Grant carved the turkey while his mother told everyone how fortunate he was to have a wife who understood the pressures of leadership. 8 months meant the affair had already begun. Did you sleep with her in our house? No, in the lake cabin? His silence answered, the cabin had belonged to Arthur. After his death, Celeste transferred it to Grant and his sister. We used it for family weekends, birthdays, and the last Christmas before our daughter left for college. Madison had been there, suddenly remembered finding a long blonde hair in the upstairs bathroom the previous spring. Grant told me it probably belonged to our daughter, Olivia. Olivia's hair was brown. Leave, I said. Grant's head lifted. This is my house. It is our house. Tonight, I am asking you to sleep elsewhere. You cannot lock me out of my own property. I didn't say I would. Then stop behaving as if you control everything. The anger in his voice was so familiar that my body reacted before my mind did. My shoulders tightened. My breath shortened. For years, Grant had not needed to yell, he only had to sound disappointed. Disappointment was how he trained a room to rearrange itself around him. I remained seated. I don't control your choices, I said. That has become very clear. He picked up the bag. At 7 tomorrow, company counsel is interviewing everyone copied on that message. How do you know? Because unlike you, I did not turn off my phone. I'll be there. You should retract the message first. Note: tell them Madison sent old personal photographs during an emotional episode. Were they old? That is not the point. Then what is? The acquisition. Harborwell was negotiating the sale of a minority interest to North Star Care Partners, a national healthcare operator. The transaction would bring capital for 12 new communities and allow Celeste to reduce her ownership without selling the company outright. Grant had spent 18 months preparing the expansion plan. North Star discovered undisclosed relationships, vendor conflicts, or questionable expenses during due diligence. The deal could be delayed or repriced. You're worried about the acquisition, I said. I'm worried about 800 employees whose jobs depend on this company. Then you should have disclosed the relationship. You are enjoying this. No, look at you. You're calm. I'm in shock. You always do this. You go cold and make everyone else feel irrational. My hand tightened around the tea mug. I forwarded evidence of possible corporate misconduct to the people required to investigate it. You forwarded intimate photographs of your husband. Those are the same photographs. Grant stared at me for several seconds, then he lifted his bag. I'm going to a hotel. Use your personal credit card. He laughed once without humor. There she is. Who? The woman who cares more about procedure than people. He walked out. I waited until the door closed before I began shaking. At 6 the next morning, I turned on my phone. There were 93 messages. 27 came from Grant. 11 came from Madison. Celeste had called 8 times. My daughter had sent one message. Mom, Dad says something terrible happened at work. Please call me. The remaining messages came from company executives, attorneys, and coworkers. Read the one from General Counsel Nina Patel first. Do not delete anything. Do not respond to Grant or Madison about company matters. Your interview is scheduled for 8 a.m. Use the east entrance. Nina was 56, composed, and almost impossible to surprise. We had worked together for 14 years. Her message made me feel less alone. I showered, dressed in a charcoal suit, and photographed the contents of the bedroom closet before leaving. Grant had already taken several suits and a small travel case, did not yet have a divorce attorney, understood enough about evidence to know memories changed when property disappeared. At Harborwell's headquarters in Minneapolis, 2 security officers stood near the main doors. Grant's black SUV was parked beside the curb. Madison sat in the passenger seat. They were arguing. When Grant saw my car, he stepped into the street and raised one hand, continued into the east parking garage. Nina met me near the elevator. She carried a legal pad and 2 paper cups of coffee. You look terrible, she said. So do you. I was awake all night. So was I. She handed me a cup. Before we go upstairs, I need to explain something. You are both a reporting employee and an interested party. Because he is my husband. Because he is your husband, Madison targeted the message at you, and you distributed the images inside a company system. Am I under investigation? Everyone is under investigation. I nodded. Nina studied my face. Sending the material to the leadership compliance channel was aggressive. Was it improper? That depends on motive, scope, and whether the content had legitimate business relevance. The vendor folder was visible. I saw it. She used a company phone. We confirmed the device number. Grant was on a company-funded trip. We confirmed that too. Then what are we debating? Whether 42 recipients were necessary. I looked at her. If I had sent it only to you, Celeste could have called the chief executive and asked him to contain it. Nina did not answer. That was an answer. Celeste had spent her life describing interference as stewardship. She was 76, elegant, socially skilled, and devoted to the belief that protecting Harborwell meant protecting the Hale family from embarrassment. What happens now? I asked. Grant and Madison are on paid administrative leave. Their system access has been suspended. Information technology is preserving accounts and devices. And me? You retain limited access because compliance operations must continue. You are prohibited from participating in the Nexar review until an independent team is assigned. That's reasonable. Do not speak to employees about the affair. I don't plan to. Do not send additional messages. I don't plan to. Do not resign. That surprised me. I hadn't planned to. Good. Someone may encourage you. Celeste? Nina took a sip of coffee. I did not say that. The interview lasted 2 hours. I described the message, the photographs, the affair disclosure, and the history of the Nexar review. I provided my phone so an outside forensic consultant could make a copy. Madison's original files contained location and device information. 6 photographs were taken inside a suite at the Langham, Chicago. The seventh had been taken in Grant's room during a Harborwell retreat at the lake cabin 3 months earlier. The company had paid for the Chicago suite. Grant's travel request listed it as a meeting room for private negotiations with Northstar executives. A Northstar representative entered the suite. Credit card records showed room service for 2, champagne, spa charges, and a $1,900 bracelet purchased from the hotel boutique. The bracelet was visible on Madison's wrist in one of the photographs. At 10:30, Nina showed me a copy of the expense report. The approval line contained my electronic initials. I stared at them. I did not approve this. Your account approved it on Monday at 6:14 a.m. I was at the airport. Your credentials were used from a Harborwell laptop. My laptop was in my office. Was it locked? Yes. Does anyone else know your password? No, I thought about it. Grant knew the password I used for our home Wi-Fi, our streaming accounts, and an old family photo service. He did not know my Harborwell credentials. At least, I believed he did not. Could the initials have been copied? I asked. The expense system records an authenticated login, not an image. Then someone accessed my account. That is being investigated. The first real fear arrived then. The photographs humiliated me. The false approval threatened my career. Company auditors believed I authorized Grant's expenses. I could be disciplined for concealing a conflict. If the acquisition team saw it, Northstar might question the entire compliance program. Am I suspended? I asked. Not at this time. At this time. Becca, we must follow the evidence. I understand. Do you? Yes. Understanding did not make it less frightening. At noon, I left the interview room and found Celeste waiting in my office. She wore a cream wool coat and pearl earrings. Her silver hair was arranged perfectly despite the morning's crisis. Celeste had never looked unprepared in public. She closed the door behind me. You should have called me, she said. I reported a company matter through the company system. You humiliated my son. Madison sent the photographs. Madison is an employee. Grant is your husband. Both facts are part of the problem. Celeste placed her handbag on my desk. Nina says you refused to withdraw the complaint. It isn't something I can withdraw. The company has the evidence. You can clarify that this was a domestic misunderstanding. Was Grant's affair a misunderstanding? Marriages go through difficult periods. Did Arthur sleep with his employees? Her expression changed. Grant's father had not been faithful. Everyone in the family knew it except, perhaps, Grant. Celeste never discussed the affairs directly. She referred to them as years when Arthur lost perspective. That question is beneath you, she said. It's relevant. No. It is cruel. I'm not the person who created the comparison. Celeste walked to the window. The Northstar transaction supports every growth plan Grant has developed. If the deal fails, lenders may withdraw. Projects may stop. People may lose jobs. Then the board needs accurate information before proceeding. The board needs stability. Stability built on concealed conflicts is not stability. She turned. You sound like an employee. I am an employee. You are family. I was family yesterday too. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag. What do you want, Becca? The question offended me more than blame would have, as she assumed every action concealed a negotiation. I want the investigation completed. And after that? I don't know. Do you want Grant fired? I want the same policy applied to him that would apply to another director. That is not an answer. It is the only fair answer. Celeste's voice softened. You've always been reasonable. That is why Arthur trusted you. Arthur trusted me because I told him when he was wrong. He trusted you because you understood that institutions survive individual mistakes. Grant's affair is an individual mistake. A false expense approval and conflicted vendor contract may not be. Her eyes moved toward my computer. What vendor contract? I watched her. The Nexera staffing proposal. I thought that was approved. Grant told you that? It was discussed at the last board dinner. I rejected it twice. Celeste's face remained composed, but her breathing changed. When? 6 weeks ago and again last Tuesday. Why? Madison's brother owns the company. Nexera's prices are 28% above market, its insurance is inadequate, and its references could not verify the projected staffing capacity. Grant said the conflict had been disclosed. It had not been disclosed to me when the proposal first arrived. Celeste picked up her bag. Do not say anything else about this until the independent review is complete. That was already my plan. At least we agree on something. She opened the door. Celeste. She looked back. Grant used my compliance login. You do not know that. Someone did. Then let the experts determine who. I intend to. She left. That afternoon, Olivia called. Our daughter was 28 and worked as a school counselor in St. Paul. She was engaged to a civil engineer named Marcus, and her wedding was scheduled for October. Grant adored her. He rarely remembered appointments, anniversaries, or grocery lists, but he remembered every detail of Olivia's childhood soccer games. He kept her trophies in his office and told stories about teaching her to ride a bicycle as if he had invented fatherhood. Mom, she said, what happened? Your father had an affair with a Harborwell employee. Silence. Dad said Madison sent you misleading photos. The photographs showed them kissing in a hotel room. Another silence. How long? He says 8 months. Olivia inhaled sharply. Why did you send them to everyone? I sent them to the leadership compliance group because they showed possible company misconduct. You couldn't call human resources? The general counsel and head of human resources were in the group. Dad says people who weren't involved saw them. Board members and senior leaders responsible for the investigation saw them. But everyone will know. They probably will. Did you want that? I considered giving her the easy answer. No, I had not wanted gossip. I had not wanted my marriage discussed in offices, elevators, or parking lots, but some part of me had wanted Grant's private behavior to become impossible for others to excuse. I wanted the matter documented before anyone could bury it. I said, that sounds like yes. It isn't the same. It feels the same to Dad. I closed my office door. Your father's feelings about being exposed do not change what he did. I know, but he's still my dad. I have not asked you to choose. He says the company may fire him. That decision is not mine. He thinks you're pushing for it. Your father knows my role in the investigation has been restricted. Then tell them you don't want him fired. I will not interfere. Olivia began crying. Why are you talking like this is a policy manual? Because if I spoke like a wife, I might collapse. I looked at the framed photograph on my shelf. Olivia at 12, Grant beside her, both covered in mud after a charity race. I'm sorry, I said. I know this hurts. Did you know before last night? I suspected. Why didn't you tell me? Because suspicion is not proof, and your father's marriage was not supposed to become your burden. It is now. Yes. Marcus's parents saw something online. Someone posted that Dad was locked out of the building. My stomach tightened. I didn't post anything publicly. I know. Do you? I don't know what to know. Neither did I. I love you, I said. I love you too. But she ended the call quickly. That evening, I met divorce attorney Elena Morales. Nina recommended her but made clear Harborwell would not pay my legal expenses. Elena's office overlooked a narrow section of the Mississippi River. She was 48, direct, and dressed in a red jacket that made my gray suit look like surrender. Before we discuss property, she said, do you feel safe going home? Yes. Has Grant ever threatened you? No. Accessed your private accounts? I don't know. Moved money? I don't know. Then we assume the possibility exists. She gave me a list: change personal passwords, freeze my credit, download joint statements, photograph valuable property. Review retirement beneficiaries.do not empty accounts.do not destroy records.do not communicate about the affair except in writing when possible. Can I change the locks? I asked, not while he retains an ownership and occupancy right unless he agrees or the court orders exclusive use. You can secure a private room for documents. The house has a guest suite. Sleep there and install a lock on the interior office if needed. I looked at her. Is this what every betrayed spouse does? No. Most betrayed spouses do 3 of the things and regret not doing the rest. We reviewed our finances. Grant and I owned the Minneapolis house jointly. We had a $280,000 mortgage on a property worth approximately $1.10 million. Retirement accounts were substantial. Grant owned inherited Harborwell shares that likely remained his separate property. Shares he received as compensation during the marriage could be partly marital, owned 2.4% of Harborwell through long-term employee grants. Some shares had vested during the marriage. Others would vest over the next 4 years. Also had a lake cabin interest, investment accounts, and a wedding account containing $72,000 for Olivia. Do not touch the wedding account, I said. I would not advise either of you to use it. It is in both our names. Download the records tonight. When I returned home, Grant's car was in the driveway. He sat in the living room with a glass of whiskey. His wedding ring remained on his hand. I noticed that before anything else, we need to discuss Olivia, he said. We need to discuss the marriage first. She is devastated. So am I. You do not act devastated. There is no correct performance for this. You forwarded photographs within 6 minutes. I recognized evidence. You recognized an opportunity. To do what? To destroy Madison. Madison sent them. She thought you already knew. Then why did her message say I deserved to see what happiness looked like? Grant looked down at his glass. She was angry. At whom? Me. So she punished you by humiliating me. I told her we needed to wait. For what? The right time. To leave me? He didn't answer. I sat in the chair opposite him. The room contained 27 years of decisions. The sofa we bought after Olivia spilled grape juice on the old one. The bookcase Grant built badly and refused to replace. The piano no one played after my mother died. Did you intend to divorce me? I asked. Yes. The answer hurt more because it came easily. When? After the North Star agreement. That could take 6 months. I needed to protect the transaction. You were protecting your compensation. That transaction supports the entire company. It also triggers your retention bonus. His eyes narrowed. You make everything sound corrupt. I make it sound documented. There. That tone. What tone? The one that says you're the only honest person in the room. I am the only person in the room who didn't have an affair. Grant stood. I was lonely. So was I. You never reached for me. I stopped reaching after you began pulling away. You lived at that office. I was investigating vendor problems created by your division. Not everything is about work. You brought the affair to work. He walked toward the fireplace. I love Madison. The sentence entered the room quietly. No shouting. No dramatic music. Just 6 syllables that rearranged my past. Does she love you? I asked. Yes. Then why did she send me the photographs? Grant looked at the floor. She wanted a decision. She wanted me removed. That is not fair. It may be true. I stood. You need to leave tonight. I'm not moving out before speaking to an attorney. You already stayed at a hotel. Because you created a crisis. No, Grant. You came home because the crisis reached your phone. He looked toward me. For the first time, I saw fear rather than anger. The investigators found your approval on the Chicago expenses, he said. How do you know? I heard Nina speaking to information technology. Did you use my account? No. Did Madison? No. Then who? I don't know. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to stop turning every problem into evidence against me. It is evidence against one of us. Grant took his coat. I'm staying with my mother. Of course you are. He paused at the door. Do not involve Olivia in the finances. I haven't. Do not tell her about Nexera. She already knows about the affair. Why would the vendor matter be worse? Because you are wrong about it. Then the investigation will prove that. He left. I downloaded the joint account records. The wedding fund contained $47,000. $25,000 was missing. The transfer had occurred 11 days earlier. The destination was a newly opened account at another bank. Grant was the owner. I called Elena. She answered from what sounded like a restaurant. He moved $25,000 from Olivia's wedding account. I said, can you see where it went? Only the receiving bank. Download the statement and send it to me. Should I tell Olivia? Not tonight. It is her money. Legally, it may still be marital money intended as a gift. Emotionally, yes, it is hers. We need to know whether the transfer was for a wedding expense, legal retainer, or something else. He told me not to involve her in finances. That suggests he knows you might notice. I stared at the statement. Can I move the remaining money? Not without discussing strategy. We can ask for an agreement freezing the account. What if he takes the rest? I'll contact his attorney as soon as we know who it is. If necessary, we seek temporary relief. Grant did not answer my text asking about the transfer. At 9:18, he replied, "It was temporary. Stop creating emergencies." That message became the first document in my divorce file. The company placed Grant and Madison on unpaid leave the following Monday. Information technology determined that my account approved the Chicago expenses from a laptop assigned to Madison. She claimed Grant gave her the credentials. Grant denied it. Madison then claimed she saw the password on a note in my office, had never written down the password. The login occurred while Madison's security badge showed her entering my floor at 6:02 in the morning. I was traveling to a compliance conference in Denver. Grant had signed her early access authorization. The smaller reveal should have been enough to end any remaining trust. It was not. The deeper betrayal came 3 days later. Nina called me into a meeting with an outside investigator named Thomas Reed. Thomas was a former federal prosecutor with a calm voice and the unsettling habit of waiting after people finished speaking. A paper copy of the Nexera contract lay on the table, the final approval page contained my name, not only my electronic initials, MY full digital signature. I did not sign this, I said. We know, Nina replied. Thomas opened a second folder. The signature block was copied from a vendor amendment you executed last year. The document properties show that Madison created this version on Grant's laptop. My hands went cold. Was it submitted? To the procurement committee, Nina said. Grant represented that your concerns had been resolved. When? 2 days before the photographs were sent. I looked at the date, the same day Grant kissed me goodbye and flew to Chicago. What would have happened if the contract were approved? I asked. Nexera would provide temporary healthcare staff to 4 new communities, Thomas said. The first-year value was estimated at $8.6 million. And Madison's brother owns it. Yes. Did Grant disclose that? He stated that Madison had no financial interest. Does she? Thomas slid a bank record toward me. Nexera's owner had transferred $60,000 to Blue Orchard Media, a company formed by Madison 6 months earlier. The money was labeled a branding fee. Blue Orchard had no other clients. Did Grant receive money? I asked. We have not found a direct payment. Then what did he receive? Nina's expression was grim. A side letter from Nexera offering Harborwell Development Services a consulting opportunity if the staffing contract expanded. Harborwell Development Services was not part of Harborwell Senior Living Group. Grant had registered it privately, planned to use the Hale name and his industry contacts to advise outside senior living projects. The Nexera arrangement could have paid his new company hundreds of thousands of dollars. When was this company formed? I asked. 4 months ago, Thomas said. Did he disclose it to Harborwell? No, I looked at the documents again. The affair was no longer separate from the business misconduct. Madison's brother would receive an overpriced company contract. Madison received money through her side company. Grant positioned his private business to profit from the vendor's expansion. My forged approval would make the entire arrangement appear compliant. The contract failed, regulators questioned it, or North Star discovered it. My name would sit at the bottom. I would not simply lose my marriage, I could have lost my career. Did Grant know the signature was false? I asked. Thomas did not answer immediately. We found a message from Madison asking whether the signature would survive due diligence. My heart began beating harder. What did he say? Thomas placed a printed message in front of me. Grant, Becca signs dozens of these. Unless something goes wrong, she'll never look twice. I read it again. Nina leaned toward me. You can take a break. No, there are additional messages. Show me. Madison had written, she'll block us forever if she realizes Owen is paying Blue Orchard. Grant replied, once North Star signs, Becca's department will be reorganized. I can manage the rest. Another message, Madison, and the marriage, Grant, after closing. She'll get the house and tell herself she chose dignity. That's what she always does. My vision blurred. I did not cry, not because I was strong. Because my body had not yet decided how to survive the information. He knew me. Grant knew I valued dignity. He knew I avoided public scenes. He knew I took pride in being fair even when fairness cost me. He had converted those qualities into risk calculations, believed I would accept the house, protect Olivia, and leave quietly. The photographs had disrupted his plan, or perhaps accelerated it. Why did Madison send them? I asked. Thomas opened one final page. A message from Madison to Grant, sent 20 minutes before she contacted me. You said she would never fight in public. Let's see, Grant replied. Do not involve Becca tonight. We discussed this after the retreat. Madison sent the photographs anyway. It mattered that he had told her not to. It did not absolve him. He had built the conditions in which humiliating me looked like a test. I need copies for my attorney. I said. Some materials are company confidential, Nina replied. We can provide findings relevant to your personal legal matter through appropriate counsel. Did he plan to have me fired? We have not found a direct message stating that. He planned to reorganize my department. Yes. Who would lead compliance afterward? Thomas glanced at Nina. Grant proposed moving vendor approval into development operations. Under him. Yes. A laugh escaped me. It did not sound like mine. Nina reached across the table, but stopped before touching my hand. I'm sorry. I looked at the copied signature. For which part? All of it. The company terminated Madison the next morning. She violated conflict of interest rules, falsified approval records, accessed my account, and failed to disclose outside compensation. Grant received notice of a board hearing. Because he was both an executive and a significant shareholder, his termination required additional review. Celeste demanded the board delay action until the North Star transaction was secured. North Star suspended negotiations instead. The suspension became public through an industry newsletter. Harborwell's lenders asked questions. Employees became frightened. Grant blamed me. Celeste invited the family to dinner on Sunday. The invitation arrived through Olivia. Grandma says we need to discuss how to protect everyone, she told me. Who is everyone? Mom. I'm asking because your grandmother usually means Grant when she says everyone. Olivia sighed. Dad says you're refusing to speak to him. My attorney advised written communication. He says the Nexera issue is being exaggerated because of the affair. Your father forged my approval. He says Madison did that. He knew. Do you have proof? The company does. Then why hasn't he been fired? Because he has a right to respond before the board. Olivia was quiet. Did he take money from my wedding account? Grant had not returned it. Elena obtained a temporary agreement freezing the remaining balance, but the missing money went to Grant's legal retainer and the deposit on an apartment for Madison. His honesty, yes. How much? 25,000. Her breath caught. Why didn't you tell me? We were trying to confirm where it went. Where did it go? To his attorney and an apartment deposit. For Madison? Yes. Olivia began crying. I asked him yesterday. He said you moved the money. I did not. He looked at me and said you were trying to control the wedding. I'm sorry. Why would he lie to me? Because the truth would make you angry. I am angry. You're allowed. Are you going to Grandma's? Yes. Why? Because I'm finished allowing other people to describe my choices while I'm absent. Celeste's house stood beside Lake Minnetonka, a large stone property Arthur had purchased after Harborwell opened its 20th community. Family dinners there followed a pattern: drinks in the library, dinner beneath Arthur's portrait, coffee in the sunroom while Celeste decided which topics had been resolved. That Sunday, the pattern failed before appetizers. Grant arrived alone. Madison had moved out of the apartment after her termination and was staying with her brother. Grant looked tired and unshaven. He kissed Olivia's cheek. She stepped away before he could embrace her. Marcus remained beside her. Celeste noticed the distance. Let's not begin with hostility, she said. Olivia stared at her father. Did you take $25,000 from my wedding account? Grant looked toward me. I said nothing, Lev, he began. The account was temporarily used to manage an emergency. Your emergency? The divorce required a legal retainer. You were planning the divorce before you took it. I intended to replace the funds after my retention bonus. You spent some on Madison's apartment. Grant's eyes moved back to me. You involved her after I specifically asked you not to. I asked Mom. Olivia's voice sharpened. She told me the truth. Celeste stepped between them. The money will be restored. By whom? Olivia asked. I will cover it. No, everyone turned toward her. Olivia's hands trembled, but her voice did not. I don't want Grandma fixing what Dad did. Olivia, Celeste said, this family has enough public embarrassment. This isn't public. It's dinner. Exactly. We should speak with respect. Respect would have been leaving my wedding money alone. Grant loosened his tie. I made a bad decision under pressure. You made a plan. The distinction silenced him. Moved to the dining room because Celeste insisted no useful conversation occurred while people stood. No one touched the food. Celeste began. The board hearing is Thursday. Northstar has not withdrawn permanently, but its representatives require assurance that the company remains stable. What does that require from me? I asked. A statement confirming that your original message was sent during emotional distress and that you do not believe Grant intentionally approved improper expenses. That would be false. You do not know what he intended. I know he said I would never look twice at a forged signature. Grant's face changed. How did you get those messages? The investigators recovered them. They were taken out of context. What context makes that sentence appropriate? I believed Madison had resolved the vendor issues. You knew about the Blue Orchard payment. I knew her brother hired her for branding. You knew she worked for you and her brother wanted an $8 million contract. She did not control procurement. She copied my signature. I did not ask her to do that. You submitted the document. Celeste raised one hand. This is becoming unproductive. No, Olivia said. This is the first useful conversation we've had. Grant looked at our daughter. You think I wanted any of this? I think you wanted Mom to take the blame if it went wrong. That is not what happened. I removed a folded copy of the investigator's findings from my bag. Nina had authorized a limited summary for my legal use. I placed it on the table. Read the timeline. Celeste did not touch it. Grant stared at the first page. Company documents do not belong at a family dinner. You asked me to make a company statement at a family dinner. His mouth tightened. Marcus, who had remained silent, looked at Olivia. Do you want to leave? Not yet. Celeste finally opened the report. She read for several minutes. The room was so quiet I could hear the dining room clock. When she reached the message about reorganizing my department, her eyes stopped. You plan to place vendor approval under development? She asked Grant. It was one option. Arthur separated those functions for a reason. The current structure is inefficient. It prevents directors from approving their own vendors. I would not approve my own vendors. You nearly did. Grant looked toward the portrait of his father. He made questionable decisions too. Yes, Celeste said. And I spent 40 years cleaning up the consequences. No one expected the sentence. Grant stared at her. Celeste placed the report down. Your father believed being necessary gave him permission to be selfish. I protected him because I thought protecting the company protected the family. Her eyes moved toward me. I appear to have taught you all the wrong lesson. Grant leaned back. So you're siding with Becca. This is not a schoolyard. You asked her to make a statement for me. I had not seen these messages. You knew about Nexera. I knew you recommended it. I did not know Rebecca rejected it twice. Grant turned to me. You made sure she saw only your version. No. Your messages provided your version. His hand tightened around the table edge. Olivia pushed back her chair. Did you love Mom when you wrote that she would tell herself she chose dignity? Grant's face softened. Lev. Answer me. I loved your mother for most of my life. That isn't what I asked. He looked at me. I had once imagined forcing him to explain how love could coexist with calculated harm. The answer no longer mattered. Olivia, I said, your father's feelings for me are not yours to carry. She stood. I can't sit here. Marcus went with her. At the doorway, she looked back at Grant. You will return the money. Not Grandma. You. Then she left. Celeste folded the report. The board will vote based on the investigation. Grant stared at his mother. You're the largest family shareholder. I am one director. You can stop this. I can delay it. I cannot erase it. You erased plenty for Dad. The words struck her. For a moment, Celeste looked old, then she straightened. And that is why I will not do it again. Grant stood. Congratulations, Becca. I looked up at him. You finally turned everyone against me. No, I said. I stopped standing between you and the consequences. He walked out. The board hearing took place Thursday morning in Harborwell's original community in St. Paul. Arthur had insisted that important meetings occasionally occur where residents and caregivers could be seen through the windows. He said executives behaved differently when reminded what the company actually did. The board gathered in a conference room beside the original chapel. Grant attended with 2 attorneys. Madison submitted a written statement through counsel. She admitted accessing my account but claimed Grant directed the entire vendor arrangement. Grant denied directing the forgery, admitted the affair, the outside company, and poor judgment involving expenses. He maintained that Nexera was a legitimate vendor and that Madison acted independently when she copied my signature. The outside investigator presented the evidence. Then Grant spoke. It was calm, persuasive, and familiar. For 20 years, I had watched him reassure lenders, residents' families, city officials, and nervous employees. He knew how to present responsibility without fully accepting blame. I failed personally, he said. I caused pain to my wife, daughter, mother, and colleagues. I will regret that for the rest of my life. He paused, but the board must separate personal misconduct from business judgment. Nexera offered a solution to a real staffing crisis. The vendor process became disorganized because multiple departments refused to cooperate. Ms. Cole made unacceptable choices, but I did not direct her to falsify approval. One board member asked why he told Madison I would never examine the document. Grant folded his hands. It was an arrogant comment made during a private relationship. It was not an instruction. Another asked about his private consulting company. I intended to disclose it before accepting any engagement. Why was Nexera already discussing compensation? It was exploratory. Why use Olivia Hale's wedding fund for an apartment deposit? Grant's attorney objected that the question was personal and irrelevant. The board chair allowed it because Grant's handling of funds related to credibility. Grant answered, I expected to restore the money within weeks. He looked at me before continuing. My judgment had deteriorated because my marriage had been emotionally over for years. That does not excuse my conduct. It provides context. There it was again, the dead marriage, the difficult wife, the affair as a symptom rather than a decision. When the board invited me to speak, I did not discuss loneliness, betrayal, or the photographs. I brought a timeline. On March 3rd, my department identified Nexra's ownership conflict. On March 6th, I requested insurance records and comparable pricing. On March 18th, I rejected the vendor pending further review. On April 2nd, Grant formed Harborwell Development Services. On April 9th, Nexra proposed future consulting work for Grant's company. On April 15th, Madison's company received $60,000. On April 27th, I rejected Nexra again. On April 29th, Madison copied my signature. On April 30th, Grant submitted the contract as approved. On May 1st, Madison sent the photographs. I cannot tell you which private conversation constituted an instruction, I said. I can tell you that every person in this room would have relied on the document Grant submitted. My name was placed on it so the conflict would appear resolved. Grant's attorney asked whether anger about the affair affected my interpretation. Yes, I said. The answer surprised him. I am angry. That is why I removed myself from the internal vendor review and submitted evidence to an independent investigator. Yet you forwarded intimate pictures to 42 colleagues. I forwarded them to the leadership channel designated for compliance escalation because they contained a company vendor file, documented an undisclosed executive relationship, and came from a company device during company-funded travel. You could have cropped the photographs. I preserved the original evidence. You could have sent them only to legal. I believed the family's influence created a risk of containment. Celeste sat 2 seats away. She did not look at me. The attorney continued, you wanted to embarrass your husband. I wanted the evidence impossible to dismiss. Those are not mutually exclusive. No, I said. They are not. The room became still. I would not pretend humiliation had played no role in my decision. Madison wanted me to see those photographs. She wanted me diminished by them. Forwarding them transferred the shame to the people responsible for investigating what they revealed. That choice was aggressive. Tea was also effective. The board recessed for 3 hours. During the break, Grant found me in the original community's empty chapel. Sunlight passed through blue-stained glass and fell across the wooden pews. He sat 2 rows behind me. You were honest about wanting the evidence impossible to dismiss, he said. Yes. You could have lied. I've had enough of that. He moved to the pew beside me. For the first time since the photographs, he looked tired rather than defensive. Madison says I destroyed her life. What do you say? That she made her own decisions. So did you. He nodded. I know. We sat quietly. Beyond the chapel doors, a cart rolled along the hallway. Someone laughed near the nurse's station. Did you ever love me? Grant asked. The question was so unexpected that I turned. Of course I did. Past tense. I loved you Thursday morning. He looked toward the stained glass. What changed? I learned you were willing to let my name protect your misconduct. The affair wasn't enough? The affair broke the marriage. The forgery changed what the marriage had meant. I did not forge your signature. You used the document. I believed Madison when she said she fixed it. You read my rejection. I thought you were being overly cautious. You always thought caution was excessive when it slowed something you wanted. He closed his eyes. I was going to leave after North Star. I know. I was going to make sure you were financially secure. I was already financially secure. I meant the house, retirement, your shares. You had planned what I would receive? I made preliminary notes. Did those notes include Olivia's wedding money? His face tightened. That was temporary. You keep saying temporary as if the intended duration changes what you took. I panicked. No. You prepared. Grant looked at me. I don't know how I became this person. I believed him. That was the saddest part. People rarely woke one morning and chose to become dishonest. They made a small exception, then another. They protected the first lie with a second. Eventually, truth felt like an attack on the life they had built. You became him slowly, I said. while everyone around you called each compromise necessary. Including you? Yes. He looked surprised. I defended you when employees complained about pressure from development. I softened your emails. I explained your absences to Olivia. I kept your mother from confronting you when you missed family events. Why? Because I thought protecting you protected us. The echo of Celeste's words settled between us. Grant looked toward the chapel doors. My father would be ashamed. Your father did many things he expected other people to conceal. He built Harborwell. So did hundreds of people whose names are not on the building. Grant gave a small, exhausted smile. There she is. Who? The woman who always had the answer. No. I had questions you didn't want asked. An assistant from the board entered the chapel. The directors are ready. The board terminated Grant for cause. He lost his executive position immediately. His inherited shares remained his property, but unvested performance shares were cancelled. The company sought repayment of improper expenses and referred the vendor matter to outside authorities. O1 was led away in handcuffs. Real consequences usually arrived through letters, meetings, bank transfers, and doors that no longer opened. Madison's brother withdrew Nexura's proposal. Harborwell later settled civil claims against Nexura, Blue Orchard Media, Madison, and Grant. The parties repaid a portion of the questionable funds and agreed not to seek company business for 5 years. The county attorney reviewed the forged signature and unauthorized computer access. Madison entered a diversion agreement for a computer access offense, paid restitution, and completed community service. Grant was not criminally charged because investigators could not prove he directed the account intrusion beyond a reasonable doubt. The Northstar transaction remained suspended for 6 months. When negotiations resumed, Northstar reduced its proposed investment. Celeste and other shareholders accepted less money than they originally expected. She never blamed me directly. She did not need to. Her silences became more formal. Harborwell survived. No mass layoffs occurred. 2 development projects were delayed, and executive bonuses were cancelled for the year. Employees were angry, frightened, and relieved in varying combinations. Some believed I had protected the company. Others believed I had aired a family dispute inside a business. Both judgments contained truth. Remained at Harborwell through the investigation, then requested a 3-month leave. The board offered me Grant's interim position. I declined. I do not want development. I told Nina, you would be good at it. That is not the same as wanting it. For the first time in years, I began distinguishing ability from obligation. The divorce became final 11 months after the photographs arrived. Grant initially requested equal division of all marital assets and a portion of my future Harborwell compensation. Elena responded with accurate valuations and evidence of dissipation. The $25,000 from Olivia's wedding account was charged against Grant's share, returned the money before mediation. Using proceeds from the sale of his new SUV, Olivia accepted the transfer. She did not thank him. The house was marital property. I had the option to buy Grant's share, but I chose to sell. Everyone assumed I would fight for it. Had spent 22 years decorating, repairing, and preserving that house. I planted the maple trees in the backyard. I marked Olivia's height inside the pantry door, but keeping the building felt less important than keeping the right to choose. Sold it the following spring, purchased a smaller house near the river with a sunroom, a manageable yard, and no memories of Grant entering after midnight. The lake cabin interest was more complicated. Grant's inherited portion remained his. My contributions to renovations created a reimbursement claim, but I withdrew it in exchange for personal items belonging to my parents and a written agreement that Olivia could use the cabin 2 weekends each year. Elena asked whether I was being sentimental. Yes, I said, sentiment is allowed. Unrecorded sentiment is dangerous. She put the agreement in writing. Grant retained his inherited Harborwell shares. The company's value had fallen after the delayed Northstar deal, so the financial consequences were real but not ruinous. Remained wealthy, was simply no longer powerful in the place where he had expected to spend his life. Madison left Minnesota. After completing the legal requirements of her diversion agreement, she moved to Arizona and worked for a small public relations agency. She sent me one email. I know you will never believe this, But Grant told me you knew the marriage was over. He said you had agreed to wait until the North Star deal closed. I sent the photographs because I thought you were using him. I was angry, and I wanted to force the truth into the open. I did not understand what he had told you about the vendor approval. I read the message several times, then I replied, Grant lied to both of us, but not in identical ways. You knew he was married, accessed my account, and copied my signature. His dishonesty does not remove your responsibility. I hope you build a life that does not require another woman's humiliation to feel secure. She did not answer. Olivia postponed her wedding. At first, she said the family crisis made planning impossible. Later, she admitted she was frightened by how easily a marriage could contain two different realities. Marcus suggested counseling. They attended together. 6 months later, Olivia called me from a bridal shop. I found a dress, she said. Do you love it? I think so. That sounds uncertain. I love how I feel in it. I'm not sure it looks like what Grandma expects. Then it may be perfect. She laughed. Our relationship repaired slowly. 1 afternoon, while addressing invitations at my new dining table, she said, I was unfair to you. You were shocked. I blamed you for sending the pictures because it was easier than blaming Dad for being in them. I looked at her. That is honest. I thought if you had handled it privately, maybe everything could go back. I thought that for years. She placed an invitation aside. Do you regret forwarding them? The question had followed me since the first morning. I regret that 42 people had to see something so personal, I said. I regret that employees became frightened about the company. I regret the pain it caused you. But do you regret doing it? No, Olivia nodded. I don't think I would have been brave enough. It did not feel brave. What did it feel like? Like refusing to carry the shame alone. She reached across the table and took my hand. Grant attended the wedding, sat in the second row beside Celeste. I sat across the aisle. Olivia had refused to choose which parent would walk her down the aisle. She entered with both of us. Grant held her left arm, I held her right. At the front, she kissed us both and joined Marcus. For the length of the ceremony, Grant and I stood near each other without being husband and wife. It hurt. It also felt peaceful. At the reception, he approached me while Olivia danced with Marcus. You look well, he said, so do you. Grant had grown thinner. The expensive confidence he once wore had been replaced by something quieter. He'd started consulting for small assisted living operators outside Harbor Wells Market. His name still opened doors, but fewer than before. Celeste says you may become Chief Ethics Officer, he said. The board created the position. Will you take it? I haven't decided. You should. I studied him. Why? You were always better at seeing where people would cut corners. That is not necessarily a compliment. It is meant as one. We watched Olivia dance. Grant slipped one hand into his pocket. I found something while moving. He gave me a folded note. It was written in my handwriting 15 years earlier. Grant, Olivia has a fever. I'll stay home from the conference. Your presentation matters. Go make us proud. Love, Becca. I remembered the morning. I had been scheduled to present the first version of Harbor Wells' vendor risk program to an industry group. Grant had a development pitch in Chicago. Olivia woke sick. Grant said his meeting could not be moved. I canceled mine. His pitch led to one of Harbor Wells' largest projects. My compliance program was introduced quietly 6 months later without the conference. I kept that in my briefcase for years, he said. Why? I used to read it before presentations. That sounds sentimental. It reminded me that someone believed in me. I folded the note. Then why did you stop believing in me? Grant looked toward the dance floor. I thought your loyalty was permanent. That isn't an answer. It may be the only one I have. He swallowed. I treated what you gave freely as something I owned. The music changed. Couples began joining the dance floor. Do you forgive me? He asked to some days. That is more than I expected. Forgiveness is not the same as trust. I know. Do you? He looked at me. I'm learning. I placed the note in my purse. You should dance with your mother. Celeste sat alone at her table, watching the room. Grant nodded. Before leaving, he said, "For what it's worth, Madison and I would not have lasted." "That is not worth as much as you think." He smiled sadly. "No. I suppose not." Celeste and I remained distant after the divorce. She resigned from the board at 78 but kept her shares. Publicly, she said Harborwell needed independent leadership. Privately, she told me the company no longer felt like Arthur's. "That may be healthy," I replied. She did not agree. A year later, Celeste suffered a minor stroke. Grant handled most of her care. Olivia visited twice a week. I stayed away until Celeste requested me. She was recovering in a rehabilitation center overlooking a frozen pond. Her speech was slower, but her mind remained clear. "You took your time," she said when I entered. "You asked yesterday." Arthur would have arrived within an hour. Arthur expected other people to wait for him. She smiled faintly. "Oh, sit down." I sat beside the bed. Celeste looked at my hands. "You don't wear your ring." "No, of course not." She adjusted the blanket. "I owe you an apology." I waited. Celeste was not a woman who reached apologies easily. Interrupting would have offered escape. "I asked you to protect Grant because that is what I did for Arthur," she said. I called it loyalty because admitting it was fear would have embarrassed me. "What were you afraid of?" "Losing the company. Losing the marriage. Becoming the woman people pitied." "I understand. That does not excuse it." "No," she looked toward the pond. "I thought if the family appeared strong, eventually we would become strong again." "Did it work?" "No," the answer came quietly. "Arthur's affairs stopped," she continued. "The contempt did not. He knew I would remain." That knowledge changed him. I thought of Grant's note. "I thought your loyalty was permanent. What do you want from me?" I asked. Celeste looked back. "Nothing." It may have been the first gift she ever gave me without conditions. "I am sorry," she said. "Not only for asking you to lie. I am sorry I praised you for tolerating what I should have helped you resist." My eyes burned. "Thank you. Will you forgive me?" "Some days." She laughed, then winced. "You sound like my son." He used the same question. "Did you forgive him?" "Some days." "Good." Complete forgiveness is often wasted on men who still need discomfort. I laughed with her. We were not mother and daughter again, became two women who finally stopped defending the men who had disappointed us, accepted Harborwell's chief ethics and accountability position. The title sounded grander than the daily work. Most days involved policies, training, vendor questions, employee concerns, and arguments about what counted as adequate disclosure. Changed the compliance escalation system. An employee should need to post evidence in a 42-person chat to make certain it was preserved. Established an independent reporting portal monitored by outside counsel. Relationship disclosures went directly to a board committee. Executive expenses above a threshold required 2 approvals from separate departments. Some people called the reforms my revenge, called them overdue. 3 years after the photographs, Harborwell completed a smaller partnership with North Star. The agreement funded 6 new communities instead of 12. Growth was slower. Oversight was stronger. At the annual employee meeting, Nina introduced me to a group of newly promoted managers. One of them asked why the ethics department reported directly to the board. "Because pressure travels downward," I said. Accountability must have somewhere else to go. After the meeting, I returned to my office. The blue Nexera folder sat inside a locked evidence cabinet. I had not opened it in more than a year. I no longer needed to. The photographs were also preserved in legal archives. Deleted them from my personal phone after the divorce became final. For months, I feared deleting them would mean losing proof. Eventually, I understood that proof had already done its work. Keeping the images only allowed Madison's message to continue arriving. "Said you stopped being his wife years ago." Grant had been wrong about that. I had not stopped being his wife. I had stopped being visible to him as a whole person. He saw the parts that served his life, the organized part, the loyal part, the calm part, the woman who remembered deadlines, protected the company, reassured his mother, raised his daughter, and accepted disappointment without making him feel cruel. When those qualities became obstacles, He planned around them. Madison saw a different fragment. She saw the powerful director who promised a new company, a public relationship, and a life in which she would no longer be waiting, and neither of them saw the full person in front of them. Perhaps that was why their relationship collapsed as soon as reality required them to look. On the 4th anniversary of the message, Olivia visited my house with her newborn daughter. The baby's name was Claire Rebecca. Pretended not to notice the middle name until Olivia pointed it out. She'll probably hate us for making it traditional, she said. She'll find other reasons. The baby slept against my chest while Olivia made coffee. Dad wants to visit next weekend, she said. Here? No. He's coming to our place. That's good. He asked whether you would be there. What did you say? That I would ask. I looked down at my granddaughter. Her fingers were closed around the chain of a small pendant I wore. The pendant had been made from my wedding ring. I did not melt it down because I wanted to erase the marriage. I changed its shape because pretending those years meant nothing would have been another lie. Grant and I had built a family, had loved each other, had also damaged each other through pride, silence, and the mistaken belief that loyalty required concealment. I can come for lunch, I said. Olivia smiled. You don't have to. I know. That was what made the answer different. The following Saturday, Grant arrived carrying flowers for Olivia and a stuffed bear for the baby. He had never been good at choosing understated gifts. When he saw me, he hesitated. Becca. Grant. We spent 3 hours together, discussed the baby's feeding schedule, Marcus's new project, Celeste's physical therapy, and whether Olivia was sleeping enough. No one mentioned the affair. No one needed to. As we prepared to leave, Grant stood beside me on the front steps. Snow had begun to fall. I heard Harborwell renewed your contract, he said. Yes. Congratulations. Thank you. He looked toward the street. I drove past the old house last month. Why? I was nearby. Did the new owners cut down my maple trees? No. They added lights. That sounds expensive. They looked good. We stood quietly. I still think about that night, he said. So do I. Do you wish you had called me first? No, his expression tightened, but he nodded. I wish I had been someone you could call. The answer surprised me. It was not a request for forgiveness. It was recognition. So do I said. Grant walked toward his car. Before opening the door, he turned. I am sorry. He had said it before. This time, he did not ask what the apology would buy. I know, I replied. He drove away, remained on the steps until the cold reached my hands. Inside, Olivia was singing badly to the baby. Marcus was searching the kitchen for a bottle. The house was warm, untidy, and a live.my phone rested in my coat pocket. 4 years earlier, I had turned it off because I could not survive one more demand. That night, switching off the phone was the first silence I chose for myself. Everything after came from what I did when I turned it back on, reported the truth, protected the evidence. I lost a marriage, a house, and the version of family I had spent decades preserving. I kept my career, repaired my relationship with my daughter. I learned that calmness was not surrender, but neither was it an obligation. Learned that privacy could protect dignity, or it could protect deception. Most importantly, I learned that shame belonged to the people who created it. Madison had sent those photographs because she wanted me to feel replaced. Grant had hidden the affair because he wanted to control when my pain became inconvenient. Forwarded the message because I refused to let their private choices become my private burden. Morning, they arrived at the office devastated, not because I had destroyed them, because the doors finally opened onto what they had done. Went back inside and closed the door against the snow. This time, the home behind it was entirely honest and entirely mine. For more exciting content, please subscribe and follow us.